Hello guys, welcome to the Big Balkan Travel Guide. After spending about 6 weeks road tripping through the Balkan countries, here is everything I think you should know before starting a similar trip and going on an unforgettable adventure yourself. You will be able to see everything in detail in the vlogs already. I also made some separate travel guides for separate countries within the Balkans that we visited, and this will be a more general guide about things you should know, some background info on the Balkans, and things I think you need to know. Let's get into it. Let's start with the definition of the Balkans, because that line is a bit blurry. The Balkans geographically is the Balkan Peninsula, which I will show you on the map right here. The natural border in the north is said to be the Sava River, which is in Slovenia. So pretty much anything south of the Sava River along the Adriatic coast, all the way up to continental Greece and the little part of Europe that is still Turkey. That is the geographical Balkan area. However, politically, Greece and Turkey are generally excluded from the Balkan region. They also have a different time zone, which the countries we visited along the Adriatic coast all the way up to Albania, they all had the same Central European time zone. We visited the part of the Balkans that is along the Adriatic coast, which is separated from the inland Balkans by the Dinaric Alps. So we visited pretty much the whole coastline up until in the Alps, but nothing past that, so not Serbia, Kosovo, Northern Macedonia, and Bulgaria, any of those countries. I did, however, already make videos about traveling in Greece and traveling around Turkey as well. When it comes to these countries being part of geographical Europe, not all of these countries are actually in the European Union, which means that for Aussies and Kiwis, this part of Europe will not count for your European visa. So you can actually stay longer around Europe in these countries that do not belong to the European Union. The region has a very complex history. It has Ottoman influences, Slavic influences that are all still visible today. It is really a melting pot of cultures and languages, and by consequence, religion as well. Most of the languages belong to the Southern Slavic family, all kind of being similar. So when we were in Montenegro, it all sounded similar to Croatian, to Bosnian, even Slovenian. Slovenian started to be kind of different from Montenegrin already. But for example, Google Translate does not have Montenegrin on there, does not recognize it. But if you use Bosnian, you'll get by. And in general, everyone speaks pretty good English, even though these countries were not frequented as much by tourists as other parts of Europe. Even though they have the stunning Adriatic coast running all the way from Slovenia down to Albania, the Dinaric Alps offering views just as incredible as the Italian Alps and the Austrian Alps, but not at all as popular. This area is nicknamed the Blue Heart of Europe, with stunning crystal clear blue rivers running through it, creating tufa barriers that turn into famous waterfalls and that erode through the Kars Mountains, creating cave systems unlike anywhere else. So then, why did people not go there? Well, the area was not deemed safe or stable enough to visit for a long time, because most of these countries have not been independent for that long. Since the 15th century all the way until 1912, 1913, they were under Turkish Ottoman rule. The Balkans then rebelled against this and eventually won the Balkan War. But then the First World War started, the Austrians-Hungarians took over. After the war finished, the countries came together as Yugoslavia. This was a kingdom that included Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, nowadays Kosovo, Serbia, and Northern Macedonia. Yugoslavia meant the land of the Southern Slavs, so these countries had a lot in common, pretty much language-wise and so on. But they were very different in between one another, and it was meant to be a unity with kind of equal power across the countries, but pretty soon one started trying to get the upper hand, which then the other countries rebelled against. Croatia and Slovenia were the first ones to get independence. Slovenia pretty much won straight away, and they were like, okay, you're independent now. Croatia, there was a bit more of a struggle, which we saw a few things from in Dubrovnik. Those Dubrovnik walls, those tall, thick walls that the fortification that it is known for, which was built originally just to resist arrows, was subjected to modern day artillery, and the walls were like, nope. So eventually there was damage to Dubrovnik and other places in Croatia, and not just material. A lot of people got hurt and died during this conflict as well, but Croatia and Slovenia, they got off quite easily, and they were the first ones to become independent. Bosnia followed pretty much at the same time. It was still going on in Croatia, which now we are speaking. This is 1992 to 1995. In 95, so in the middle of the 90s, the biggest genocide in Europe since the Holocaust happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The things we saw in the Genocide Museum, just all around the country, like things we learned about that we are not being taught in school, even though it is literally in our backyard, it did not let go of me for quite a while into the trip. It was simply terrible. Eventually, international intervention was done and peace was struck. Kosovo, belonging to Serbia, they started to rebel because they did not want to be part of Serbia. Montenegro got independent shortly before eventually Kosovo kind of did, but they are not recognized by the Serbians, nor are they recognized internationally, like by the UN. So that is how the Balkans were shaped, with the last independence of Kosovo only happening in 2008. So all of this was going on quite recently, which is the cause for why the Balkans are only now kicking off the tourism, making use of their beautiful coastline and creating income that will hopefully create a positive development in these countries, which it'll be up to us to keep an eye on that and be responsible tourists if we do decide to go there. Because in Montenegro, Albania, the waste management is not ready for us at all, and we do have to be kind of cautious about it. We decided to just keep our trash with us and put it in the recycling once we got back to Croatia. I know that's not possible for everyone, but yeah, just beware of trying to be a responsible tourist now that things are starting up there, but they are not at all prepared, or the local protections for nature and the people are not in place yet. It's not all at the level it should be yet, but it is still safe and beautiful to visit right now. But let's have a look at when you should go. When is the best time to visit the Balkans? We saw a lot of cyclists in the Balkans, and usually May, September and October are the nicest months, because in the summer months the temperatures get too high, and in the winter months, for example in the mountains, roads might not be accessible due to snow and ice and so on, and it might be pretty cold. In April, things were not starting up quite yet. A lot of things were still closed, and especially campings, glampings. In Albania, they were still building things that had to be there for the summer season then. So April, I would say if you can, skip it. But if you want to go with less crowds and more affordable prices, it might be something to look into. But generally, I would say the season proper starts in May all the way down to October. The autumn I like very much personally, because that's when the leaves change color, mushrooms and berries fill the forests, the water is still warm after warming up from the summertime, especially along the Adriatic coast. But in springtime, you do have the wildflowers. So it's one or the other. The peak months, July and August, I would try to avoid if I were you, especially in places like Dubrovnik, which see a mass of day trippers and just visitors in general. Kotor also has cruise ships docking there, even though it's super tiny and just fills up with people from this cruise. So those months, I would say, even though it is a lesser visited area, you can definitely still escape the crowds in certain places of the Balkans, but generally it will be busier in the summertime compared to spring and autumn. Alright, now that we know, we should definitely go to the Balkans because it's so beautiful and it's safe. We also know when to go, but we don't know how to get around yet. If you want to see where to go, then I will make a separate video of itineraries, shorter, longer ones, combining different countries, cities, highlights that I would suggest, more off the beaten path itineraries. So definitely check out that video if you are still not sure on where exactly you would go in the Balkans. And then it's time to see how you will get around. We obviously did this with our own car, but you can also rent a car. But if you do, then make sure that it is allowed to cross borders as well, because not all rental companies will allow this. You will also need an international passport to cross the borders, and the car will need to have the right documents as well. I would say get a car instead of doing it by public transportation, because the public transportation is not as well developed. Neither are the connections as great. For example, I looked into interrailing in the Balkans, but there's only really a connection between the bigger cities, and then you don't really have a way of getting to the places that you really want to see. So having a car is definitely a big plus. In countries like Croatia, you will have to pay toll. In countries like Slovenia and Austria, they have a vignette, so you pretty much pay toll for a certain amount of time. So it is different from country to country, so you'll have to look into this as well. I would also recommend downloading an offline map so that you do have a GPS still if you happen to go offline in these dynamic mountains or wherever. Always make sure you have a backup. If you want to see how we got the car ready and everything we brought for a road trip, then check out the Get Ready With Us video that I uploaded at the start of our Balkans trip. When it comes to the diesel, we had a car on diesel, and the cost for the diesel depended on the country, obviously. It gradually got cheaper the more south we went, all the way up until Montenegro. So it was 144 in Slovenia, 141 in Croatia, 138 in Bosnia, 137 as well in Montenegro, and then as soon as we got to Albania it was more than 170. So it'll depend. I don't know what it's like for the other countries like Kosovo, Serbia. I have no clue, but it can differ quite a lot in between countries, and it might be useful to top up your diesel before crossing a border if it will be more expensive there. Talking about expenses, let's get into the budget. So that is what our transportation cost us. We drove about 8,000 kilometers all the way from Belgium down to Montenegro and then visiting everything on our way back up again. So 8,000 kilometers, we paid maybe 145 on average per liter, and our car goes at 6 liters per 100 kilometers. So you can kind of make that calculation. It wasn't too bad at all, especially if you're not paying for flights. The parkings were pretty affordable. We made sure we had parking with our accommodations all the time as well, so that would save us some money in bigger cities. And I did look into what it would have cost to rent a car in the Balkans for 2 months, which would have been 1,400 euros. If there's multiple people and you can divide the cost, it's not the end of the world either. Because if you end up flying between places and stuff, you end up paying the same amount of money. But anyway, within these countries, they also have different currencies. Most countries use the euro, for example, Slovenia, Croatia, Montenegro, and even in Bosnia and Albania, we could pay with the euro, but they did have their local currency. The Bosnian mark is more or less at double of the euro. So what we did was just divide by 2, and then we knew what we had to pay in euro. When it came to Albania, it was 100 times the euro. So we would turn it into cents instead of euros, and then we would easily know what the price was as well. In Albania, we got away with not getting any local currency at all. We were only there for 3 days. But in Bosnia, we did need to have some cash on us in the local currency here and there, be it a shop or a parking or some entrances. They did just want a few mark instead of getting the euros. An easy way to get them without having to pay ATM fees was simply by paying something in euro and asking marks back as change. That way we would just get some local currency for free. Anyway, so I've already said what we spent on transportation. Next thing is accommodation. We decided to stay with the locals in apartments and glampings, and it's just such a great way of supporting the local economy and also having meaningful interactions with the locals, instead of staying at the big resorts that the Arabs are building now along the coast. We spent on average from 18 euros on average in Montenegro to 21 euros on average in Slovenia. So more or less around 20 euros a night, depending of course on where you are. And this was the cheapest options. On food, we spent on average 12 to 15 euros a day. So 12 in Montenegro, 15 all the way up in Slovenia. We did cook most of the time, but we did enjoy lots of the local delicacies, and we did go out for food here and there. The things that we loved, obviously, in the north you have incredible truffles, wine. It's a very big wine region. They have prosciutto, so like the cold cuts, cured meats, local cheeses. They have stuffed peppers, the bureks that we always had for lunch, which are puff pastry filled with either meat or spinach and cheese. The sevapcici are small kebabs that are served in 7 or 8 kebabs with some French fries, but also ayvar. Ayvar is the local condiment that is made of bell peppers. There are stuffed cabbage leaves, and of course the local rakia, like hard liquor, if you are looking to get a buzz on. Beware of the shops closing on Sundays. Not a single supermarket would be open on Sunday. So get your groceries on the Saturday if you do not want to go to the gas stations to find anything edible. A lot of the times some bakeries were open and restaurants, of course. But if you do want to cook, then yeah, be prepared. We mostly used Waze to navigate because it shows you the maximum speed limit. This was not always the case in Albania. The speed cameras are very well indicated, especially, oh my god, in Croatia. There was a speed camera every kilometer if you do not pay for the toll road. It was terrible. But generally, there are signs indicating them as well, following the European rules. And then, yeah, they were often on Waze, so that would be our main way of navigating. When it comes to getting a SIM card, we paid 25 euros for 1 month for a SIM card that covered 1 terabyte in Montenegro, and then it covered the other countries that weren't EU, so Albania and Bosnia, where we were going as well, where we then had 11 gigabytes to spend. So that cost us 25 euros. It was more than enough to cover a whole month and all our travels within those 3 countries, which was very useful because inside the EU we can use our Belgian and Portuguese SIM card, but once we got to those countries, we did need a local SIM, and this one killed 3 birds with 1 stone. When driving, most countries also will want you to keep your lights on, the headlights on, at all times. And I believe that is it for this video. If you have any more questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, then definitely give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more videos coming up. I definitely hope to see you in the next video. Bye!